Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by Datadogs Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events, and today is one of such events. If you want to find out more about the events we have, there is a link in the description. Go there, check it out. You'll find. I don't think we have a lot of events published there, but we have a lot in the pipeline, so soon we'll put more and more stuff there. Then do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to get notified about future streams like the one we have today. And last but not least, we have a Slack community where you can hang out with other data enthusiasts. So join it too. And during today's presentation, you can ask any question you want. And then after the presentation, we'll cover these questions. And now I will stop sharing my screen and the floor is yours. Please start.
Yeah.
And I loved your t-shirt.
Thank you.
Oh,
you cannot see everything. Work tomorrow for better today. It's
I love it.
It's great. So thank you so much, Alexei, for having me. Thanks, Francis, for organizing everything. I met Francis, right? He was doing a lot of the back-end work. So thanks to
Francis is doing most of the work. Yeah, I'm just here standing. He's actually taking care of all the organization. So thanks, Francis.
Just getting the credit, right, for his work. So thanks everyone for joining today, and for those who are watching the recorded session on YouTube, thank you so much. This session is going to be a little bit different. There's a lot of sessions about the technical aspects of being a data professional, whether you're a data scientist, an analyst, BI developer, data engineer, ML engineer. There's a lot of training out there about the technical aspects of the work. I think that, at least from my perspective, I haven't seen a lot of material about how to build a good impactful career, how to progress, how to make big career decisions, how to, these kind of things. So I'm trying to share a lot of materials that will help people boost their career and boost their impact. This is based on my experience, and I'll talk about myself and who I am in just a moment. But this is based on my 20 plus years of experience and just seeing what people struggle with, mentoring a lot of people, managing a lot of teams. So I'm just trying to share my insights and thoughts. So as I said, this talk is for data professionals who want to be more impactful. When I say data professional, it's on purpose, because I'm on purpose not trying to distinguish between the different roles. I'm trying to focus on big concepts that are applicable for every role, no matter who you are and what you do. So in terms of what we'll cover today, I'll quickly introduce myself. I'll talk about the mindset of impact. I'll talk about the workflow of how you take work and how you decide what to do and what to work on. Things you can do before you decide to take something on, and the understanding of the role, because I think that one of the things that's holding people back in a lot of cases is the fact that I think that there are still data professionals who don't have a good mental model of how do data people create impact, and how do they create outcomes for their business. So I'll try to cover some of that as well. And then I'll try to open up for a Q&A. So I will aim to leave time in the end for questions. If you have any questions, as Alexei said, please send them in the chat, and I'll try to leave some time in the end for that. Cool. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about myself, but my name is Shachar. I've got more than 20 years of experience in data and analytics leadership. I started my career about 20 years ago as a DBA, Oracle DBA. Very shortly after, I transitioned to a team lead role, and since then I've always been in data and leadership positions in different organizations, both in established startups. When I say established, I mean like 100 plus people, as well as larger companies such as PayPal and Meta. At Meta, or Facebook as we used to call it back in the day, I was the first and only data engineering manager in London, and I've essentially spent a lot of time building the London site and building the data engineering function in London. I also worked on ads, and in my last role, I was the director of data engineering for all of trust and safety problems on Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. today I've left Meta about 4 months ago, and today I'm an independent advisor. I help companies and data professionals with their data journey. I do a lot of interesting projects with company to help them learn how to become good with data. I coach and mentor professionals independently. I'm trying to share the knowledge and insights that I have. I share a lot of content on LinkedIn and try to share things I've learned mostly the hard way. So if you want to engage, please connect and follow me on LinkedIn. I'm going to share a lot of things so you can engage with that. And I'm also working on a few courses similar to what you're hearing today to help people navigate their careers and boost their careers. So please feel free to message me if you want to learn more about that. Cool. That's it. That's about me. So let's talk about impact. And I don't know if everybody, I mean, at Facebook, we always used to use the word impact, but I don't know if everybody understands what impact is. So the best way to explain that is, I think, by looking at a very typical conversation that I would usually have with people when I ask somebody, okay, why did you build this dashboard? And they tell me, because my product manager asked me to do it. I think we can all probably agree that that's not the best motivation for why you should do certain things or shouldn't do certain things. So I think that when I think about my work, and when, you know, as I was mentoring and coaching people or managing teams, when I think about their work, I wanted them to have the mindset that their time is very limited, right? You don't have an infinite amount of time. And within that time, you want to do the things that basically help the business progress towards its goals the most, right? And that's what people need to spend their time on. So if we go back to that conversation and you hear somebody saying, oh, I'm building this dashboard because their product manager asked them to do that, then maybe it's very impactful, maybe it's very important, maybe it's going to help the business, but it doesn't sound, it doesn't sound very convincing to me, I should say. So I want to just break it down real quick to a few components here, and to really understand what do I mean when I say help the business progress towards its goal the most. When I say help the business, we don't just do pet projects, right? I see sometimes people build churn prediction model, and I'm like, okay, why are you building this? And they say, oh, because I wanted to try and get better at machine learning, or I wanted to try and build a prediction model. And I say, okay, but is anyone asking for it? Is it useful for anything? Do we even have a churn problem? How are you going to use the scores of this model when you have that? And, when you see that it's not really helping the business, it's really just to help the person, this is where I sometimes get a little bit anxious. When I say progress towards its goals, every business has its goals, right? In the end of the day, it's probably for most businesses, it's revenue, but revenue is usually a byproduct of doing a really good job, right? So if you have high engagement in your product, or you're really good at acquiring new customers and you create a lot of value for them, these are the things that ultimately translate to revenue. You really want to make sure that your work and the things that you do really help the business progress towards the goals, because this is what will get recognized. If you just build a churn prediction model and nobody's ever using it, and it's not driving any meaningful value, don't be surprised if it doesn't get recognized by anyone, right? And when I say the most, and I think that this is a very crucial thing, because I talk to a lot of people, and I see that they work on something they're very passionate about, and they work on something that they think is very impactful. And in a lot of cases, it is very impactful. But the fact that something is impactful and valuable to do in its own right doesn't mean that there isn't something else right now that would be even more impactful and more valuable to do. And you want to make sure that, again, because your time is limited, you want to make sure that you work on things that help the business progress towards its goal the most, right? So if you're doing something that on an impact scale of a 1 to 10 will be a 5, it's still decent. But if you could be doing something that is 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, I would say that's what you need to focus on, right? Very simplistically. So impact, first of all, is a mindset. And that's the first thing that I would really love you to take away from this from this entire talk, and once you get into the mindset that this is what you want to do, and you learn how to do it efficiently, you will see that you drive better results and better outcomes for your business. Your work gets more recognized, and then you progress faster. So what can you do to improve that? There basically, I think there are a couple of areas that I would like to focus on. I'm not going to talk about post-work, so sorry if it says 3 areas and not 2. But there's things you can do before you decide to work on something. And there's also things you can do to better understand your role as a data professional. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So in my mind, when I think about doing work, there are things that you do before you actually, so if you have a task of building a dashboard, right, there's some things that happen before you actually build this dashboard. There's the work itself that you do, and there's things you can do to promote that work and to increase the impact, like increasing adoption of the dashboard, for example, and things like that happen after the work is done. And that's the workflow. I'm going to focus mostly on these 2 areas today. So when we talk about pre-work, you can also call it intake process. This is basically the process that you use to decide what are you actually going to work on. And the first thing I want to say here is you want to turn unconscious decisions to conscious decisions, right? You want to make sure that every time you do something, you do it because you've intentionally decided to do it. Every time you say yes to something, you basically make a decision, and you want to make sure that you spend time thinking about it and not just do it because somebody just asked you, hey, can you do this? And you just automatically do it without thinking. And why is it important? It's important because that's how you give yourself the most chance to evaluate what you're going to work on and make sure that you make a right decision. So we said that impact is about helping the business progress towards its goals. So what are the goals of your business? And I think that a prerequisite of making the right decisions is to actually understand your business well. And I think that this is where some people fail, in the sense that they don't fully understand what is important for the business, what are the things that the business is trying to drive, what are the goals, what is hurting the business, or what is preventing the business from achieving these goals. So I think that every data professional should be able to articulate the goals of their business with a lot of confidence. And if you cannot do that, you're basically guessing, right? You're basically guessing what is going to be impactful and what's not. So though that's great, right? That's not news, but how can you actually know? So first of all, read a lot about the business, whichever company you work for. There's a lot of material. Just be curious, read about it. Talk to people who are closer to the business than you are. I mean, you can talk to people on the product side, on the sales and marketing side. You can talk to people in customer support, spend time with people in finance. These people see the business from very different, from a very different perspective than you do. And they can give you a lot of valuable insight about what the business is trying to achieve, what is important right now, etc. Apply to training. If you work for bigger companies, usually there's a lot of training available for employees about different aspects of the business. So you can just apply to that. And I think that's really, really helpful. Talk to your manager and to people who've been around longer than you have, just because sometimes they have a lot of useful and historical context and a lot of knowledge about how things work. And in general, I think you want to get into the mindset of just being curious and asking a lot of questions. I think that, when people feel ashamed to ask questions and when they feel like their questions might be stupid or they may not be the right one, this is usually when they get stuck in their career, because they prevent themselves from learning and advancing. Now, when you take in work, there's a few things you want to consider, right? When you basically you're faced with a new task, somebody's saying, okay, let's build a dashboard, or you're identifying a business problem and you think, oh, I'm going to work on it. There's a few things that I think you should consider at that point. The first one is why are you doing this? Why is this important, right? The second thing is the gap between what people ask for and what they really need. And there's a big gap, and I'll show you an example for that in a moment. And then the difference between can you do it to should you do it, which is, I think, something that a lot of people get very confused about. So why are you doing things? Start with the purpose, right? You want to build a dashboard, you want to build a churn prediction model, you want to build a pipeline to a new user dimension. That's all great, but what is the outcome that you're trying to drive by doing this work, right? What will be achieved for the business? Don't just say, okay, we will have a dashboard, but what will be achieved as a result of having this dashboard? What is going to be different in the world now that we have this dashboard versus when we didn't have it? Think about your own motivation. Why are you doing it? Is it because somebody senior asking you to do it? Is that because it's interesting for you to work on a new technology? Is that because you think that that's the right thing to do? But what's driving you to do this? How do you know this is the right thing to do? It's a question you need to ask yourself, because if you don't know, you should spend some time understanding before you actually go and do it. And I'll give an example in a moment. And also, how do you know this is impactful? If your PM says, oh, we really need the dashboard to show, where new users are coming from. Okay, but why is this impactful? Is that a problem? Like, do we have a problem with new users? Why do we need to understand that? And more importantly, what will be achieved? Okay, if we know where new users are coming from, what are we going to do with that information? And these are things that you probably want to clarify. A good question that I like to ask myself is, what happens if I don't do it, right? If we don't have this dashboard, what will happen? How big of a crisis that is? And you also need to ask yourself, what are you giving up by doing this? Because as we said in the beginning, your time is limited. You don't have a lot of capacity. So you want to make sure that you do the things that help the business the most. So every time you say yes to something, you're essentially saying no to a few other things. And you want to make sure that you make the right decision by saying yes to this piece of work. So now, after you've evaluated these things, you also need to understand that people ask for certain things. It's not always what they need. And there's a big gap. And I want to give an example here. So in a previous company, one of the marketing VPs, he came over to me one day. I was the head of analytics, and he said, hey, Shachar, can you help me get a report that looks like this for one of our customers, which was basically looking at the revenue this year and last year, breakdown by target group and control group. Very simple report. It would literally take me less than 5 minutes to do it. And I probably already have a query that gets exactly that report, because that was very, very common thing to do. So, that's a valid question from VP of marketing. I wouldn't, a lot of people wouldn't be suspicious, but I started interrogating him to basically understand what is it that he's trying to do. And I realized that he's not actually going to be able to get what he wants from that report. And to achieve this goal, he needed to do something completely different. So let me show you what that conversation looked like. Okay, so he comes to me and says, hey, Shahar, can you get me a report of year-over-year of revenue breakdown by target group and control group? Okay, most people would stop here and say, yeah, sure, why not, and get that report. But my response was, why do you need this report? Right? That's a legitimate question that every data professional should ask. And they said, oh, great, because we need to know, our campaign's performance for this year. Okay, some people would settle that and say, okay, yeah, they need to know the campaign performance, so I'll do it, right? It's a VP of marketing asking. But I asked, why do you need to know that? And he said, because the client is asking for it. This is where a lot of people would stop. Yeah, the client is asking for it. Of course, we're going to do it. But my question was then, why are they asking for it? And he said, because they don't believe that our campaigns are adding value. Okay, if they don't believe, yeah, that this report can show that clearly, target group is doing better than control group year over year. So, we add value. But I said, why not? And they said, because they suspect that the way we choose our control groups is wrong. Okay, so if they don't believe that the way we choose control group is right, then sending them this report is not going to help, because again, we're showing them target group against control group, and they think, we see the numbers, we just don't believe your control group, and we think that you're bluffing it. So this report is clearly not helpful. And then I said, okay, why not? And we talked about that, and I said, okay, probably we need to have a meeting with the client and explain our control group selection methodology and talk about that and understand their concerns and figure it out. But clearly what he was asking for is very, very different from what he needed. And I think that just like just like you don't go to your doctor and say, hey, can you just prescribe me knee surgery and this and that medication, you don't go to a data professional and say, give me a report that looks like that. They're the professional, they've spent their entire time, they know their data, they know their stuff. So I think that you need to get into the mindset of, I'm the person who has the knowledge, and it's my responsibility to make sure that, just like the doctor's responsibility is to make sure they give you the right treatment and they prescribe the right medications, it's your responsibility to make sure that the thing that you're doing is actually helping the people achieve the goals. So don't get into the trap of somebody is telling you, can you build this? And you're like, yeah, sure, of course. See the gap between what my VP of marketing was asking for, which is a report for revenue year over year, and what he really needed is a proof to the client that our control group selection methodology is sound. So there's a huge gap here. Don't waste your time, and asking the question why so many different times will help you uncover the real needs and behind what people are asking you for. Yeah, we talked about the expert mindset. And then there's a difference between, which is something I think a lot of people struggle to kind of come to terms with, is the difference between what you can do and the things that you should do. Okay, so let's explain that. Things that you can do are things that you're technically capable of doing, right? You have the knowledge, you have the tools, the technologies, the permissions, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're a data engineer and somebody is asking, can you build this pipeline? Of course you can build this pipeline. I mean, you're a data engineer, you're capable of building a pipeline. The things that you should do, they're derived from your role definition, from your scope, from your from your other priorities, et cetera. So the fact that something is impactful and it's worth doing still doesn't mean that you should be the one doing it. And that's super important, because I see a lot of people who waste time, and I'm using the word waste because for what else they could have done, I mean, they could have done things that are much more impactful. They're wasting their time with things that they can technically do, but they shouldn't be doing, right? And to give an example, you see data engineers or, any data professional really spending too much time correcting data instead of going to software engineer and say, fix your logging because the data you're creating is garbage, and then we have to deal with it downstream. It doesn't work like that, as an example. So this is a small model that you should know the things that you can do and you should do, execute on them. Things that you should do, they're technically part of your job and you should be doing them, but you cannot do. You need to probably learn something new, or you need to get permissions, get new tools, technologies, whatever. The things that you can do, but you shouldn't, you need to either delegate to somebody else or refuse and say, I'm sorry, this is not my job, I'm not going to do that. And the things that you shouldn't do and cannot do, just avoid that. And it sounds obvious, but I see a lot of people spend time in this quadrant, doing pet projects, and, because they want to learn new technology, they want to build something using generative AI or whatever. So they spend time on something that they shouldn't do and they cannot do, and they're just basically wasting their time. So all of that is just the intake process. And these are things you can think of before you actually decide to work on something or to take on a job, right? Now, when you decide to work on something, you identify a problem, you have a task. I think that it's really, really important that you have the right understanding and the right mental model of how do data professionals create impact for the organizations. Because it's not just, enough to build a dashboard or to create a report or to build a pipeline. You need to do more than that. And in my mind, the role of every data professional is to create visibility through data. Okay, so you want to help the business see the things they cannot see using their data and to create this kind of understanding. When I talk about creating visibility, I just want to share a few key concepts which I think everybody would probably be familiar with, but it might be useful to kind of go over them real quick just to make sure that we think about them in the same way. So first of all, metrics and proxy metrics. Metrics measure a specific phenomena or something that happens, and they measure exactly the things that you're trying to measure. For example, daily active users is the exact number of users who have been active on a certain day, right? And there should be a definition. There usually isn't, but there should be a definition of what is active, what is a day, et cetera, et cetera. So, but that's a metric. And there's a lot of cases where you cannot measure the exact phenomena. It's very difficult. It's not possible, etc. For example, how much value are customers getting from our product? We don't know, right? Well, depending on the product, we can estimate, we can assess, but this is where proxy metrics come into play, where they cannot measure exactly the thing you're looking for, but you can think of things that will be close enough to estimate. For example, if people spend more time on the product, it could mean that they get more value, right? It could also mean other things, like the product is getting very slow and they need to spend more time to do the same things. But you have to be very careful, but it helps you estimate or assess the thing that you're trying to understand without being able to measure it directly. The next thing is dimensional breakdown. So when you have a metric and you plot it like that, for example, overall revenue over time, this is telling only a small portion of the story, right? And what I mean by that is if you break it down by a certain dimension, let's say region, then you can actually see that while the story before looks positive, I mean, there's revenue, it's generally going up. I don't know what the goal was or the expectation of the forecast, but it looks fine. But if you look under the hood, if you break it down by region, for example, now you actually see that revenue in EMEA is going up and it's on an upwards trajectory, but the US revenue is going downhill. So dimensions really help you look under the hood or break the metric down and be able to understand what's happening underneath. And being able to throw more dimensions at the metrics that you have will help you uncover a lot of different things that you may not be aware of or you may not know, right? So if you just build a dashboard and you just plot revenue, you're missing some very important information. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself with regards to creating visibility. First thing is, do we have the right metrics for our business right now? And do they measure the right things? Okay, to give an example, if you have customer support and you measure the number of cases closed, it doesn't mean that more issues get resolved. It doesn't mean that more customers are becoming happy. It just means that you close cases, right? It could be that the customer support protocols, they close a lot of cases without even assessing them because that's not something they deal with or they don't have headcount or priority. So you think, oh, okay, they're closing more cases, we're doing a better job, and actually customers are becoming less happy. So as a data professional, I think you should be asking yourself, do we actually have the right metrics and are we measuring the right things? I see a lot of dysfunctional companies and dysfunctional products. And sometimes the reason they're not doing well is because they're, in first place, the things that they're measuring are not the right ones. So this is where you can add a lot of value when you do this kind of work. Then ask yourself, okay, are these metrics defined correctly? When we talk about daily active users, what is active? Who defines that? How is it defined? Do we know? Etc. If you cannot measure the right things, okay, like in this example, we don't know how many happy customers we have. We cannot measure that. Is there a proxy metric? For example, churn can be a proxy metric for unhappy customers. So if our churn is increasing, maybe we're doing a bad job on customer support. It can be 1,000 other things, but it can also mean that. So having a few different proxy metrics with the right hypothesis can help you understand whether the right things happen. And then thinking about dimensions, ask yourself what dimensions can you look at to get better understanding, and whatever dimensions you have, you probably need more. So always think about what other type of view can I create for my business, and the ones that you don't have can actually add a lot of value. So that's just in terms of the mental model of the work. And now in terms of data coverage, that's another concept or another thing that you should be thinking of as a data professional, for example, because that's increasing visibility, right? So if you only have visibility, let's say to 80% of the marketing budget, maybe because some of that is done manually or something is spent not through a proper system or whatever, or if you don't have all the sign-up flows logged correctly, and because of that, you're missing a lot of signups and you have data coverage issues, then correcting that is going to be very, very impactful potentially, because you're enabling the business to see something they were not able to see before. So as a data professional, make sure you really understand how the product works, how the data is created, where is it coming from, where is it stored, and understanding coverage is going to be important. As a side note, I will also say dog food your products. If you don't know what dog fooding means, it means use your product or try it. It comes from a dog food company, a company that created dog food, and they said our food is so great that we're going to eat it ourselves, and it since then become a synonym for testing your product. If you don't use your product yourself, how are you going to know if it's good or not? Cool. We're getting close to the end. The last thing I will say is that as a data professional, you should also recognize that there are a lot of different patterns, and it doesn't matter, which company you work on, which project, which product. There's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot of things that if you can recognize and if you can spot them, then it will help you. It will help you basically achieve more impact. It also means that when you move company or when you move to a different project, you don't need to relearn everything. So just to give some examples, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the first one is ROI, return on investment, right? It's a very simple concept. I'm sure everybody knows that. It's so simple that it's very often overlooked, but sometimes if you want to create visibility for your business, thinking about things in terms of ROI, how much do we invest and what do we get in return, is very, very helpful, right? So you can ask yourself the following questions. Can you measure all the investments? Can you measure all the costs? And then can you measure the return, and what do you get in return? And if you cannot measure, can you estimate that using proxy metrics? And then what dimensions can you use to break it down and identify points of higher and lower ROI? So these are good, very simple and good questions you can ask yourself. And I've seen a lot of different products and a lot of companies that you come in and the first thing you see is that they don't really have a full good mental model in different places of their ROI, whether it's marketing and customer acquisition to spending on employees and what have you. But just sorting out these things and making it extremely clear, I think, can create a lot of impact. Just to give an example, we invest X dollars in marketing, we get Y in customer lifetime value. And in EMEA, this is an example for dimensional breakdown. In EMEA, the ROI is lower than the rest of the world. So this is how you use a dimension to say, okay, now this is where we need to focus. The second pattern is funnels. Funnel is a really good way. I'm sure everybody knows funnels, but it's a really good way of thinking about a process or workflow that has multiple steps where users can basically drop out along the way. And to give an example, we have 100 users going on a website, 40 of them add a product to their shopping cart, and then only 25 check out. So measuring and visualizing these funnels is going to be very, very impactful and important to help you identify things to work on and optimization points. The things you can think of is conversion rates between the different steps. Okay, each two consecutive steps of the funnel. You can also think of the conversion rate between the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel. So how many people get on the website, how many people buy something in the end, the time that it takes between steps. I think that sometimes people miss the fact that the more time it takes, sometimes it means that it's more likely to drop. So looking at times between steps is going to be helpful. Ask yourself, are you capturing the entire funnel? Because I think that in a lot of cases, in a lot of companies, when I look at funnels, I'm like, okay, but your top of the funnel isn't really the top of the funnel, because there's a step before that you're missing, right? So in this example, if you look at number of users who go on the website, you can ask yourself, okay, how many users have seen a link to our website but didn't click on that, for example, in ads or in Google searches and things like that. So there's always another point at the top, and sometimes there's more points at the bottom of the funnel, right? The people who check out and buy a product, how many of them return, or don't return the product within 30 days, as an example. So many funnels are incomplete, and just asking yourself, okay, what else is above, what else is below, is going to be very important. And of course, dimensional breakdown, because every funnel looks differently on different countries, different channels, on different platforms, etc. And the very same funnel could look different on web and mobile, and that could potentially mean that your website is really good, your mobile app is not very good, and this is where you need to spend time. The last thing I'll say on this one is competition. Almost every business operates in a competitive environment, so getting more information about your competitors in a structured way is always adding useful context. So there's a lot of freely available information about companies in the website, in financial reports, on news or media. There's a lot of things you can scrape from the internet. There's a lot of things you can get from their website using APIs. Just make sure you're not violating their terms and conditions, and talk to your legal team. This is really, really important. But for example, if your competitor is a shipping company and you want to know their shipping rates from UK to Germany, you want to know how much it's going to cost you to send a 1 kilo package from UK to Germany, you can probably get it from the website or using their APIs. And creating a data set of that with your prices, their prices, can actually give you a good insight of where do you need to spend time. This is another pattern and another thing that you can think of. As I said, there's a lot of patterns like that. There's a lot of things that if you just think about them, it becomes your toolbox, right? And you can come into any new project, any new company, even your current company or project, and just say, okay, these are the tools that I have. How do I use ROI? How do I use funnels? How do I think about competition in that environment? And quickly find and identify a lot of opportunities for great impact for the business. So to quickly summarize what we just said, the most important thing that I wanted to start with, and I hope you take it away from here, is that impact is a mindset. It's a way of thinking about your time and about your work. And the more impact you will have, the more results you will achieve for your business, the better, the more it's going to be recognized, and therefore the more you will be likely to progress in your career. To increase your impact, you probably want to turn unconscious decisions to conscious decisions by asking a lot of questions and understanding why you're doing the things that you're doing, what are you giving up, etc. By recognizing that there's a gap between what people ask for and what they need, and you're the professional, and it's your responsibility to make sure that you give people what they need, not what they ask for. And also recognizing the difference between things that you can do and the things that you should do, which is a big trap that I think a lot of professionals fall into a lot of times. Understand the goals of your business. It's really, really important. Spend time learning, be curious, understand those things. It will really, really help you. Remember that every time you say yes to something, you're essentially saying no to other things, and you want to maximize the value for the business. So just be conscious of that and think about that. Every time you say yes to something, what are you giving up by saying yes to this thing? What are you not going to have time to do right now? Remember that the job is to create visibility through data and all the concepts we discussed, like metrics, proxy metrics, dimensions, coverage, etc. and then learn and try to identify patterns. Don't just treat your work as a big continuum of work that happens, but try to look for these patterns and create tools that will be in your toolbox, and you can reuse them again and again. It will just save you a lot of time and effort. So what else? There's a lot more patterns we can discuss in this context. We don't have time right now. There's a lot of stories I can share. There's a lot of things you can do when you finish the work. People sometimes think that they finish the project, they build a pipeline or a dashboard, and that's it. They don't realize that there's so much more things they can do to actually boost their impact once the job is done. So there's a lot of things we can talk about there. As I said, feel free to connect, to follow. I'm trying to share a lot of those insights. I'm working on some courses. So if you want to connect, please do. And thanks for being here. Thanks for investing in yourself, and thanks for organizing, Alexi. I want to see if anyone has any questions.
This is like the last slide is also amazing in addition to all the others, because I never knew how to do a QR code.
There you go. You just learned something today.
Yeah, that's. And you have Katya's picture on the first. Like Ekaterina.
Yes.
She likes posting her pictures and posts. I think she launched an academy recently. Anyways, it's a bit off topic.
I just saw that I had to take a screenshot with the instructions for the QR code, and I was just scrolling through my feed and I saw that and I thought, okay, that's a very nice picture.
I'll send her a screenshot. Yeah, so I have a few questions. And by the way, if somebody wants to ask a question, there is a pinned link in the live chat. So I have a few questions on my own. So imagine that I'm a junior or a middle level specialist. So I join a company, and essentially what I get is a more or less defined tasks in Jira, right? And somebody like my manager or senior in the team already kind of digested the requirements, and then I ended up doing a task. Yeah, so how, in this situation, how do I grow? What am I? Because what you told, I think, there is a lot of useful information, but in my case, maybe my scope is quite limited. How do I kind of expand?
Yeah. Perfect. So first of all, this is very, very common, right? It happens to a lot of people. It happens in a lot of companies. And you should ask yourself, if that's the environment you're in, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, can I grow in this environment? And sometimes the answer is not every environment is very good, conducive to growth, right? I was talking to...
Right. So if you talk about technical skills, I don't know, Python, SQL, whatever, right? You have tasks, they're well defined. So what you can do is just focus on doing your work. And by doing that, you grow technically, right?
Yeah, which is part of growth, and it's an important part of growth. And if you're very early in your career, maybe this environment is okay for you. You spend a few years there just learning the chops, but there are still things you can do, right? You can talk to your manager or the project manager or whoever is giving you the tasks and say, hey, I would actually like to learn more. How did you come up with this task? Who is asking for it? Who is the end user? Can I meet with the end user? Can I talk to them? I have some questions to ask them. Or when you finish building this, if you're building a dashboard for them or you're doing an analysis, say, hey, is it okay if I meet with the stakeholders and share with them the analysis just to make sure this is the right thing and that's what they needed? Try to short circuit those things if you can. It's not always possible. I was mentoring somebody from I think Pakistan, and he was in an offshore team, and they basically get tasks like you just mentioned. And I asked him, who is the stakeholder? He said, I don't know. My project manager is giving it to me. They talk to the client. I don't even know who the client is. You can ask questions, but also recognize that not every environment is the best for your growth. And sometimes, you have to evaluate and ask yourself, am I in the right place for me right now?
And I like the tip you gave about meeting with the stakeholders. Like when you learn who is actually requesting from where it's coming from, then you can actually meet with them. And it's quite powerful, right? So then they know like who is actually the person who did this. And then they, next time, maybe they come to you, right? Not to your product manager or engineer manager or whoever.
Absolutely, and that's what you want. I mean, if you can short circuit and have less middlemen
Mhm.
or middle people, the better
Mhm.
it's going to be, because every person in the middle is going to create more misunderstandings, more communication gaps, more delay in the delivery of whatever that is. So the shorter you can have the circuits, the better it's going to be for yourself and the stakeholders over time. You can
I
even
probably,
ask
yeah,
your manager, like, can I join this meeting? I just want to
I
observe,
was
right?
going to say that, yeah. Because
Yeah,
like it's somebody digests and regurgitates all these requirements and produces a task, and then being a part of that process is also quite nice and maybe even enlightening. Because like then
100%.
you will learn how actually. Because like this is, to me, this is even more difficult when you think about that than actually implementing, because the requirements usually come in a super vague and undefined form, right? And then somebody defines them, figures out what exactly needs to happen. And oftentimes, I don't know, more than 50% of work is there, right? And then being a part of that is quite something. And then, like another thing you mentioned is talk to people who are closer to business. And then how do I talk to them again if we think about the junior middle level professional who is like, you know, with limited scope and tasks? Like, how do I find these people who are close to business?
Um, so how do you find them? They're everywhere. You just need to talk to them, and every other person in the company is gonna give you a different perspective, right? So you can go to the kitchen at lunchtime. You see somebody you don't know, you just go introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm working with data. Who are you? They're working on finance. Oh, okay, cool. Do you mind if I join you for lunch? I was just curious, how do you use data in your day-to-day job? Do you actually use data? And they will start saying, oh yes, we use Tableau, but it's not very good. We don't have all the information we want. And he's like, okay, cool, I can help you. I'm the guy. When I joined Facebook, I remember my first meeting with my manager there, Vish Agashi. He was the VP of data engineering. And one of the first things he told me was, Shahar, never eat alone. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, look, you have 3 meals a day, right? Breakfast, lunch, dinner. You probably have at least another coffee break or two. So let's say, but let's be conservative, right? So let's say you've got 3 meals a day, 5 days a week. Let's say, 52 weeks a year. That's 780 opportunities to meet a new person. So just go introduce yourself, just go and ask for the meeting. And when you talk to this person, even if it's not the right person for you, you talk to somebody in finance and they know nothing about data, they don't use it. The next question I would ask is, who else can I talk to? Do you know anyone in finance who uses data? Because organization is a graph, right? And you want to traverse the graph. So you start with any random node, it doesn't matter which one. And within 1 or 2 or 3 hops, you're going to find the relevant people for you. So you meet with somebody from customer support because you smoke and they smoke. So you built a relationship, right? Or you play basketball, they play basketball, whatever. So
That's
you
a better thing, right?
yeah,
Basketball is better than
healthier.
smoking. Yeah.
Or you both like making coffee and you meet them at the coffee machine 3 times a day. Doesn't matter, right? But you talk to them, they know nothing about data, fine. But is any of your colleagues using data? Is there anyone I can talk to learn more? Uh, Very quickly we'll find.
When you say just go and talk, of course, for some people it's natural because they're extroverted and like being talking with other people. But what if I'm shy and then it's not as natural to me? Like, how do I kind of step over myself and go and talk to people? Because, like, I know nothing bad will happen, right? But, like, still, how do I kind of convince myself that they don't bite, and then it's okay just to approach people and sit and talk?
So I think that this is, first of all, it's a good question, and I think that a lot of people feel uncomfortable in this situation. One of the ways I was mentoring people, and one of my suggestions was just prepare a list of questions, right? It doesn't have to be long, but have 5 questions you want to ask every single person in this company. What data do you use? What kind of decisions do you make in your day to day? Can you give me an example of a dashboard that you use? Can you show me how you use it? You can think of questions up front. It takes away a lot of the pressure and stress, because I think that a lot of people, they're just anxious because they don't know what to say. So knowing what to say is going to help. Treat it like an interview, like a conversation. You're not there to impress them. You're not there to have them think that you're the best person in the world, the nicest person in the world, whatever. You're just there to ask them a few questions because you're collecting information that will help you do your job better. If you get into that mindset, I think that's going to be very very useful. The other thing you said, nothing wrong can come out of it. I think you're right, because I'm a little bit extroverted, but I know that for some people this can actually be very intimidating, because they're worried that they will ask another person for a meeting and they will say no. And this kind of rejection is difficult. And I think you have to be prepared that some people will reject and say, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time. And that's okay. But even if your conversion rate is 50% and half of the people you talk to are willing to spend time with you, that's good, right? I mean, there's still 50% of people who give you valuable information that will help you achieve your career goals. Why not?
Now I want to share my screen because there are questions, and I think it's easier for you if
Yeah.
you see them too. So so here are the questions. So the first question is about job seekers, like how do you prove that you have this impact mindset that we talked about, and how to convince them that, okay, you have these things, now hire me.
Yeah, very good question. So I think that the way you talk about your work matters a lot. I actually posted about it recently, so you can read on my LinkedIn feed. But the way you talk about your work matters. If I'm interviewing somebody and I ask them, okay, tell me about a project you did, and they say, okay, I built this dashboard, and I say, okay, why did you build this dashboard? And they say, because somebody asked me to. So I said, okay, so how did you know what metrics to put on the dashboard? They say, oh, they just told me. That's not very impressive, right? But if I interview somebody and I ask them, okay, tell me about the project you did. So they say, okay, so I work with the marketing team, and our customer, we believe that we're wasting a lot of money on customer acquisition because we're acquiring the wrong customers. So I wanted to solve that. So I started building a dashboard that will show us the entire marketing funnel. I also calculated the lifetime value for a customer so we can get good ROI. And based on that, we started breaking it down by channel, and we realized that most of our marketing activities are actually decent because they're positive ROI. There are 2 channels where we're wasting a lot of money because we acquire low value customers. And as a result of that, we decided to spend less on these channels and transfer the budget to other channels. I think that way of talking about your work is much more impressive, right? Because what I'm hearing is this person knows why they're doing things. They identify the business problem. They know what the solution is, and they're very connected to the purpose of what it is. So it sounds a lot more impressive. And so the way you talk about your work matters a lot. And in interview, this is mostly what interviewers will pick up on, because you're not in a job interview, you're not reviewing the code. You're not showing them examples. You're not doing any of these things. So it really is about how you talk.
Yeah, thank you, Yakonat, for your question. Then the next question from Mark is like what we talked about. If you skip the middleman and go directly to people, like how do you find time to actually do your job?
This is a great question. I think that having time to do your job is one of the biggest challenges that people have in big companies. And
as you grow as a senior, right? Then
yeah,
the
and the
more
more
senior
you
you have,
grow,
less time you have to actually do hands-on stuff.
Exactly. And also the more you grow, the bigger your scope is. So the more people you need to talk to, and being on top of that is becoming more and more difficult. So I agree with the sentiment. There's a lot of things we didn't talk about time management. We can probably spend at least 1 hour talking about tips and tricks for time management. The one thing I will say is you don't have to talk to every single person. Some people will have more insight and value than others. I used to support a product of like $7 billion run rate a year, and it was a big team of 150 people. Of course, I never had time to talk to all of them, but there was one very senior engineer on the team who was involved in all the most important initiatives. And this person was actually very good at aggregating a lot of information and explaining that in a very simple way. And I knew that spending 30 minutes with this person a week will help me understand all the things I need to understand about the product. So building relationship with them was good. And some of the product managers, for example, in this team were just not very useful. I felt like I'm spending time, I'm not getting much in return. So prioritize the meetings that you have, spend time with the people that actually help you get value. It's also okay that, I mean, your job is a portfolio. You don't need to spend time with everyone. It's okay if some of the tasks you do because somebody asked you to, but the three most important things, this is where you spend most of your time on, and that's where you're going to drive most of the impact.
So basically time management and management of who you talk to, right?
Absolutely. And we can spend a lot more time talking about time management. I think this is something a lot of people struggle with as they grow.
I assume the answer to this is yes, right? You will slides.
Yeah, and I mean it's available on YouTube, right? You can always watch the
I
replay.
guess like people just want to have to see the slide deck.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll see if I can export it and put it somewhere.
Or
If you
like
can,
just share the Google link, Google Drive link, and we can put it in the description.
okay, cool. And if you can just message me on LinkedIn, I can also
Yeah.
share something.
Okay, and then another one is about you're a consultant right now, right?
Yes.
So do you have any advice for people who want to start following your path?
Um, Yes, I think don't start from scratch in the sense that there are a lot of really, really good mentors and people who've been there before, done that. When I started with consulting after 20 years of working for big companies where everything was really structured, I knew what my job is. I had I had a job description. I had people. I worked with people. Now I'm on my own. I need to start selling myself. I need to having meetings, write proposals, send invoices. There were a lot of things I had no idea how to do. Don't start from scratch. There are a lot of people who've been there before. People like Jonathan Stark. He's really, really, really good. Anyone who wants to go to consulting, anyone who wants to go to technical consulting, Jonathan Stark should be your starting point. People like Alan Weiss, who's been a consultant for a very long time. He's written many, many books around that, like the $1 Million Consultancy and etc. So he's got more than 10 different books about consulting. There are people like Ron Baker with books about value-based pricing. There are podcasts about consulting. So you can learn many of the skills that you need and answer a lot of the questions by just finding good mentors and people who can help you get started. If you're a data professional on LinkedIn, there are people like Benjamin Rogojan, for example, who is a consultant. He's been doing that for a while now, specifically in the data space. I think there's a lot you can learn from him. So when I started, I knew that I know nothing about consulting. This is what I want to do. So I need to find people who can help me learn. And that's true for everything you do. It doesn't matter if you go to consulting or you want to get to work in a big FANG company and you don't know how to do that. Finding good mentors along the way and people you can learn from and people who can give you inspiration, answer questions, etc., is very worthwhile. And I actually posted last week about the importance of having good mentors. So look for it. I think that's one of the best ways to boost your career.
Here, by mentors, you actually don't mean like a one-on-one coaching. Because like all these people who you mentioned, they are book authors. So to get like advice from them, you don't need to actually speak with them because they have produced so many materials, right? So you can just read all these books. and learn from them.
That's also, but you can also have one-to-one coaching sessions with Jonathan Stark, for example. He does that. It's very expensive, but I think it's a good investment, right?
Okay.
I had amazing mentors along my career. I've had good managers that invested in me. I had good colleagues that I found as mentors. I also paid mentors a lot of money, and that was an amazing investment because I'm investing in myself. I make my own value higher, and it pays off very quickly. So I think these are good investments that every professional should consider.
Probably worth another talk, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, that you can talk about that for a very long time. But unfortunately, we have to wrap up. So that's all we have time for today. So thanks a lot for joining us today, for sharing your experience. I've seen comments that it's very valuable. So I definitely agree with that. I still have some questions, but yeah, maybe I'll save them for the next time. So yes, people should follow you on LinkedIn. I remember this slide with a QR code, and there you'll post about like all the things you work on, right? So we should
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely. And feel free to message me, ask questions, engage, and I'm happy to come for another session. We can do just a Q&A session if you want, ask me anything kind of session.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, then thanks everyone. Thanks, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for questions, and yeah.